Hello and welcome to Supercharged, episode 199. I'm Adam Dotches.
And I'm Tommy Houghton.
And we are here with Spencer Williams.
Hello.
Okay, good. You have a name I can pronounce. I had one a couple weeks ago on Awkward, and I was like, I'm going to get this. This guy's Jewish. I can handle it, and I fucked up his middle name.
Those are fun.
We're swearing already today.
Fuck.
Yeah.
Shit. Get that out of the way.
But Spencer, why don't you describe what you do so I don't fuck that up as well?
I'm an immersive creator overall. I also do standard theater and film, but my heart and more, thankfully, my time goes into immersive stuff.
And so what does that look like in terms of how you create it? Because obviously immersive experiences can take place in several mediums and be a lot of different things. I mean, what Tommy does in a sense is like I feel like going into an escape room is stepping into almost like a film set, and you're just going through that episode.
Yeah.
But how do you create an immersive experience?
It kind of depends on the experience that I'm creating. I've always been, it's not like a method director per se, but I really like even processes as well as product kind of matters to me. So it's different for say a narrative sandbox series that I do called Walk the Night, which is based on more sort of living ghost stories versus more guided experience like this piece that I'm developing now called Mother's Milk, where I'm the co-producer for that, which is sort of we think of it as a living gallery, a way to experience a film that's already been shot. Versus this other piece that I made called Make Music. The guest and the host make music, and that is very, very interactive.
And how does that work? Because you mentioned it in your email earlier, and I was like, well, what is that? And then I didn't get back to you, and now I'm very curious.
I guess you'll just have to come.
Yeah, I've done it.
Yeah, Tommy,
okay.
You might actually, Tommy, you might be able to better describe it.
What am I invited to? I don't know.
Tommy,
I don't want to spoil it. I think that's
right.
I think that's one of the fun pieces of what this form is that it doesn't necessarily take a set form. The idea of like a screen-based piece of entertainment that's limited to a screen or a book or a page, the ability to surprise you is limited in pretty much plot reveals, which is not anything wrong with that. But with immersive stuff, you can surprise people even the context or framework of your show or what it even is. And something really exciting about that. So I went in knowing very little to the piece, and I really liked it. So I would say go in knowing as little as possible.
Okay, I will.
If you were to come,
I didn't know if I couldn't tell because of how it was named if I was being invited onto a show or if it was an experience. And I figured it was probably an experience, but that I think that clears up enough for me.
Yeah.
That would be.
I'm actually glad that you felt that way. Hopefully, it's not too much of a bad confusion, but that's kind of also part of what we do. The way that it's kind of built right now is you can go on. If you go to the website, you kind of navigate and find the page to get the ticket, and that's really when the experience starts. Is by purchasing the ticket to begin with.
You're gonna have that buy. It's like, what is the other word for buying?
Yeah, purchase.
Yeah,
acquire.
I get stuck on those all the time.
Yeah. The basis, the way that we do what we do call it is it's a recording experience that literally anyone can participate in. And that's been the main thing that we've kind of striven for. So you'll just have to come by and then form your own opinion based on that.
Cool. I'd love to try that. I'm curious how you when you start putting these experiences together, and maybe don't use the guest and the host make music as an example so I don't get spoilers. But if how do you pitch it to people? How do you tell people like this is? How do you entice people to something where it's kind of hard to explain because it's so many different things, and also because you don't want to ruin it?
That is a very good question, and I don't know that it's gotten easier for me, which is kind of why I love immersive theater, because I feel like when it's difficult to describe something, you're doing the right thing if it means a bunch of things to you.
Yeah, I mean, because like for me, I felt like writing for the web, I had to pitch all the time, and it opened up a world of understanding for me in terms of how to pitch anything. And then I started working on this game I'm working on, and I'm like, I don't know what the hell how do I describe this to people? I figured out a few ways, and every time I write down something that I have a list of, it's this, and it's just a collection of a few words that complete that sentence. But I haven't figured out how to talk about it as a whole, and I guess that's,
yeah, talking about the genre as a whole versus talking about your individual projects, because as Tommy was saying, it's very wide. The main basis for it, though, is that we consider an audience member a more or less integral part of the piece. And then the way that someone carries through that interaction and that inclusion and that incorporation, that can vary to the degree where someone says that they're doing something immersive and they're not, then all the way to something being so immersive that it feels like it's part of your life. The way that the way that I would describe make music, for example, is the way that I just that I just described it. The way that what we landed on with Walk the Night, especially in those first years, is that it's like a living haunted house. It's like having a theatrical experience within an actual haunted house, as opposed to the rounding a corner in the boo-ah of a vampire. You're actually going in and mining and figuring out what led this house to be haunted, based along a plot line that you may or may not be familiar with. Same thing, you could go into any site, like actual haunted house, and look up the history of the haunted house. But the main thing is for you to be there and explore and experience those things. Yeah,
and I wish more haunted houses were like that. I hate going to these Halloween things like at Universal or whatever. My boyfriend loves them. We have too many friends that love them. Even my friends who are not really into horror like that experience, and it's like you walk through a thing and they're well put together. Usually the costumes are good, but they just jump out at you, and I don't like jump scares. And so I usually, when I'm in a movie, I just like meditate myself out of that possibility. I don't know how else to describe it, but I like shut my body down so I don't react to it, because I find it annoying. It's not like I don't feel anything. I just feel a muscle spasm, and I don't want to. So
I get
like
that,
doing
because
that
those
and walking.
I hate jump scares with a passion.
Yeah, they're cheap.
It's like
it's kind of sadistic.
They're
too.
cheap, and I'm sure some of it is psychologically speaks to me, like surrendering that. Like I hate going through haunted houses. I actually don't go through them. But what really intrigues me is I'm fascinated by their design. There's a project I'm working on. We brought in one guy who we wanted to bring in different designers who have different elements. We brought in a guy who's deliberately built haunts, because even though it's not a scary experience, he knows how people work. And there's a really big driver where you plan fear. It's like, okay, well, let's use this, but use the driver instead of fear. Let's use another emotion that helps drive people. But it's interesting that it's like people. It's like the idea of people in flatliners who like get near death to feel pleasure, or like almost autoerotic asphyxiation, where instead of actually risking your own death or life, you're getting these feelings.
Yeah.
And it's these weird forbidden feelings that somehow drive people to feel excitement. But in essence, it's the tail wagging the dog, because people then keep making these experiences that might have elaborate production value.
Yeah.
And your theme like Saw or American Horror Story, these big franchises, but then it's still the same thing. It's just people jumping out at you.
Yeah.
Versus like really spooky atmosphere and stuff that can get more under your skin.
Yeah. It's funny. I got my start in immersive by directing a haunted corn maze and not wanting to do the scares. I had to fulfill my contract. I had to do that, but then we basically put a show underneath it. Kind of snuck the spinach into the meatloaf.
Yeah, you tried to elevate it.
Yeah, and then I had just sold separate tickets, and we would have a separate show that people could go and see and have a narrative through line and characters. So I mean, those scares, people like them. There's something to be said for that, but we can elevate.
Yeah, the idea of elevating, because to me, I don't mind a jump scare if you just have them throughout something, it gets old. But if you have them in a way that can help reinforce something or put the narrative forward, like, I think that's interesting and compelling.
Yeah.
And even the fear of having them in a space but not actually having them makes people kind of antsy. And so I kind of like that feeling, like when you have the right level for me of fear and nervousness, where it's helping drive you and doesn't, but not to the point where it paralyzes you.
Yeah, I the only time I'm ever really okay with the jump scare is if it feels really natural and purposeful.
Yeah.
A lot of the times I just feel like it's the movie's talking to me, or whatever game, whatever it is that's doing it, is telling me I'm supposed to be, like, I just want to mess with you right now.
Yeah.
And I don't, it's like, let me be in the experience. It feels like I'm jumping out of the experience.
Yeah.
There's the second thing I disliked, I don't want to say hated, the most about A Quiet Place, which I think I'm the only person in the world who hated that.
I haven't seen it.
Not hated. I don't hate it. I didn't like it. I don't know why it's like, I never normally say that, but then it started coming out of my mouth like a week after I saw it, and I'm like, I definitely don't hate the movie. It's fine. It's just
it rubs you the wrong way.
Well, too many jump scares, and for a movie that's supposed to, that had the perfect opportunity for amazing, unique, but, you know, it didn't have to be innovative, but like really solid sound design. It was like really generic, messy. I like what they wanted to do with it. I just don't like I thought the execution was just really frustrating, and but that was.
Well, you'll be excited for the sequel.
Yeah, I mean, I'll probably skip that one. I'm happy for John Krasinski.
I hope they call it a quieter place.
Yeah. So did we talk about it already?
We've not.
But you've seen it.
I have, yeah.
Do you share my feelings about how loud and?
I liked it. I mean, I think there were things that with the narrative that kind of drove me a little nuts. But overall, I mean,
But the sound, though, I just don't understand why no one has a problem with the sound.
I mean, the sound in terms of what, the noises or what?
Well, it was just so busy. And for something that's, they had so much they could have done with silence. They could have.
I mean, they did a lot with silence already.
What do you mean?
I mean, a lot of the opening is completely silent, which I liked.
Yeah, I mean, a little bit, but it's still, there's a lot of music, there's a lot of noises just going in and out, and aside from them being plot issues in some cases, mostly around Emily Blunt, it was just also like there's just so much noise going on, like give me, they could have been so scary with just tiny little things.
It seems like you were missing the dynamics and the sound.
Yeah,
I think probably
very much.
I think one thing, this is what I hate about traditional filmmaking, is that you're often having to do things to please studios, and this was a Paramount film. They spent a lot of money on it.
Yeah,
and there could have
sense.
The idea is that you're probably wanting to, like, Pixar had to really fight for the opening of WALL-E being as quiet as it was, because it's basically a half-hour silent film.
Yeah.
What about Up? Because
I feel Up was huge.
Well, that's different.
Like Up was like, you remember Up, so it's gonna be fine with us doing this in WALL-E.
I think it's the idea, though, of making the first opening half hour silent. Like, I think there's something about sound that people want comforting, and that tradition. I mean, that's the thing. Is tradition, especially for a big blockbuster. You can be experimental all you want for a small Sundance film, but the idea of doing something big as a studio-driven picture is tough. And so I think the studio probably gave them as much leeway as they could. Yeah. And I think the idea of story-driven points and the way they did sound design for the latter half of the film, because the first 20-some minutes of the film is completely silent.
Yeah.
I guess that just got erased from my memory.
Yeah, the first like 25 minutes.
Aside from the sound effects.
Yeah, and the cool thing is a lot of it's
some sound. I'm not saying that.
What I like is that a lot of it's muted. So I thought the first 25 minutes was brilliant. I thought the way they handled it was really, really clever. But then I get what your point is down the line there are elements that definitely pop up that are more traditional.
And the thing is that in a movie like that, they could have had jump scares that were organic. That they didn't need to be. And then also the nail bothered me a lot. Like people will argue with me that she would have that she didn't have time to deal with the nail, but she did have time to consider dealing with the nail, and then showing us that, like, no, I have to run now. But it was just like, oh yeah, forget it, and then never remember it again. And I should stop talking about this because I don't want to spoil it for you and anyone else.
I haven't seen it.
Spoiler: there's a nail.
Yeah. I picked that up. But is it a fingernail? Is it a metal nail? I don't know.
Good.
That's the right thing to think.
What's interesting,
I'm trying to be vague. I'm glad that it was vague enough.
It's
one thing that uses scare as well that I always go back to as an example, and I'm finally glad because Nintendo just recently renewed the copyright for it, is Eternal Darkness, Sanity's Requiem. It's a GameCube game that was really revolutionary at the time. GameCube didn't sell as well as other consoles. It was a second-party software, so it was a company that was doing exclusive work for Nintendo. Nintendo technically owned the copyright, but it was not produced by Nintendo directly. They had the copyright. It actually lapsed for a while. The Switch and the Wii and the Wii U all would have been perfect homes for this kind of thing. I'm really hoping it comes out again. I think they will hopefully announce something this year. But basically, it was a isometric kind of horror game that's similar to like Resident Evil, where you are navigating the ancestors in your family that are kind of cursed by this ancient evil. And you can pick the ancient evil. There are 3 different kind of powers or sects of it that let you kind of pick which alliance your family has. But you find out this curse has traveled through your family through generations, and you play through different generations of your family and navigating this curse. But the main like throughput is the present day, navigating your father's death through his giant mansion and unlocking these secrets from your family. So basically, you're playing against these monsters that pop up, and you've got to fight them. So on top of a health meter, you also have a sanity meter, which depletes if creatures, for example, injure you. That goes down slowly. But if a creature sneaks up behind you, your sanity decreases. And as it decreases, the game messes with you in the most delicious ways. Where at very first, it's like you hear sounds like babies crying or like animals or flies buzzing. Creatures will pop up that aren't real. And as soon as you attack them, they go away. But as it goes, they get more extreme to the point where when it's really depleted, the game fucks with you on a very meta level, where it looks like the volume's turning down onto the TV. It acts like the game is erasing your save data, and they can't find your save data. It acts like the TV turns off.
Wow.
There's like a fly on the inside of your screen. There's a lot of really amazing stuff that messes with you directly as the player, and it's brilliant. And the sanity effects are there's a video of all of them, and they're amazing. So I absolutely love the game, and I'm excited for what a current gen version could look like.
Yeah,
because it's the perfect way of messing with you in a way that, again, most games.
Yeah, GameCube is the wrong time to release something like that.
I applaud them for being experimental. GameCube had a lot of.
Yeah, it's just a shame.
Yeah, no, it really is. GameCube was them trying to prove that Nintendo had a grown-up attitude by adding games like Hitman and third-party games that were more not adult, but it's an image that Nintendo's always been battling. Where would Grand Theft Auto ever come to a Nintendo system?
I don't know why. Don't battle that too hard. Like, be what you're good at. They're different, and like that seems like a good thing to be in the gaming industry that doesn't have that elsewhere.
Well, I remember. I think it was there was some piece or other that said Nintendo bases everything that it makes on the play of the game. The creative elements, all of that come up from the play. So I can see how that would be to transition into something more mature could be a challenge even in the eye of the of the audience. I think, love though that meta messing, because it actually starts incorporating the player as an element in your own mentality.
Only a handful of games over the years have done that in really satisfying ways, and Nintendo I always thought was kind of the innovator in it, because you have like Star Tropics was one of the first games that ever did this on the NES, where at one point the game tells you to dip your map in water, and you're like, how the hell do I do that? And you realize it's actually the instruction manual, the map from that, and you got to dip that in water, and that tells you where to go.
Wow.
And I remember when I played that, my cousin had an NES, and we were playing it, and it's like, what the hell? And we kept getting stuck, and finally we're just like, I think we had to raid Nintendo Power that there was like a hint you had to use an instruction manual. I'm like, oh my god, this is it. And the revelation that you actually have to dip this thing in water, and we ended up ruining the whole instruction book. It got waterlogged, and we had to dry it out, but that was a really cool moment. And then Earthbound, like certain games like Undertale that were inspired by it, do kind of interact with the player on some level, but not in the same way. It's just like putting your name in the game is one thing, but then being able to mess with the player in a way that you feel it's breaking out of that screen is really fascinating. And I think that's actually the horror that creeped me out the most, is playing Eternal Darkness at night. Yeah, they have jump scares, sure. But the idea of, as these sanity effects would happen and you're playing, I was playing at one time in my room at like midnight one night, and I was alone awake. It was dark. I had the lights off, and I was playing. And then the sanity, you hear like a woman crying in the distance. And then the TV slowly, like the volume goes down. And I'm messing with the volume, like, what the hell? And I'm like, wait. And I noticed the volume option was like, that doesn't match my TV's volume thing. But I'm like, and the idea of like, it was really chilling.
The crazy thing now is that a lot of the games can actually control the TVs for real.
Yeah.
So that'd be interesting to see that happen.
So there's so much
Switch
you
can certainly control itself, which
Yeah.
goes to that being a good platform for it, but also MHL.
Yeah. There's so much that you can do now, and so I'm really excited to see companies like Nintendo now with the Switch and obviously with the Wii and sadly the failed version of the Wii U, having these levels of control that definitely allow for a deeper engagement with the software. And yeah, Nintendo I think does focus on the play. Granted, they also focus on making cheap components. That's actually part of the ethos, is trying to make it as cheaply as possible, which I get. That's why they always focused on game design over better chips and graphics. So they'll always be trying to deliver a better developed product that is as cheap to make as possible. But again, the idea of immersive entertainment, especially for scary stuff, that finds a way to really get at you under the skin, because anyone can make you jump. But anyone that makes you creeped out, and when you're up at night staring at the ceiling going like,
then they get to you. Yeah. Well, and I thought a lot about this as I was making making what would be the first immersive piece, the Haunted Core Maze. The whole point of there's an element of adventurism in Haunted House, where you're going to the edge of what is safe and what the boundaries are. I mean, we all go in when it's poorly done. It's like it's just a total false boundary. It's kind of tourism as far as that goes. But to really engage someone's sense of adventure and work with the perspective, it sounds super philosophical, but it's actually applicable. That's how you do it. You do it well. I mean, same thing using dynamics and silence. Sound is your through line for film. You're getting a million cuts or 100 cuts a minute.
Yeah. Sound
Sound is your through line. So when you have a way to be able to mess with it, even changing it to that scream and that scare, it is, as you said, a major opportunity, and being able to do it in the right way, it alters everything, and adds to your storyline rather than haha gotcha.
Yeah. I think that's the idea, is making sure if it can tie into the narrative in a way that's really clever or like meta. It's like what Hans Zimmer did with the soundtrack for Inception was brilliant, which is that giant like bois horn sound is actually the song from the movie. I Regret Nothing, or whatever it is, the Edith Piaf song that's played as the wake up song. It's actually that song slowed down.
Whoa.
And so all the sound is meant to be very intentional, that it's almost like that boing, 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 that thing that he would play is actually him slowing down that song and using some of those first notes as this then new inspiration for an orchestral piece. And so the idea is the music is meant to be very slowed down and very and again, Inception-y. So when creators are able to play with music and sound in ways that, and like with Daft Punk and Tron Legacy, they use sound effects from the film and the music. So it feels very organic to what's going on. So yeah, I love it when they are able to make sound, music design, all those tie together in this richer way that kind of influences and even has like a meta wink to the storyline.
Yeah. Well, and the thing that I love about stuff like that is whether or not the audience gets it, they'll feel it.
Yes.
Yeah.
We don't always know the reference points as we're experiencing something where they come from, but if it's done well, all we know is that it makes sense and it fits.
I think I think it's also better because the idea is that if you are a creator and you're asked to contribute part of something, the piece should not distract from the whole, and it should blend in perfectly in a way, like you said, makes sense and ties into the. But if you find yourself being drawn out because of something, it really, like a good example for me is with the Justice League movie and Wonder Woman. I love the Wonder Woman theme. I think it's really interesting and captivating. But the problem is it's so jarring and different from every other piece of music in that film, in both films, Wonder Woman and Justice League, and even Batman v Superman when she first comes in. Her theme is amazing. I love the sound, but it is so jarringly different from the rest of the score and I could see someone being like, well, yeah, it's meant to stand out because this is a standout character, and it's like,
well, it's like one of the things that I remember learning in theater in the early days. I was part of a scene where the director wanted the audience to feel like they were interrogated. Okay, you can make someone feel interrogated for the moment and then give them the reference.
Yeah.
The other thing is you can make a poem about boredom without it being boring.
yeah. Yes.
Well, that was my issue with Call Me By Your Name. That the first half of the movie, you're supposed to feel like Elio, who is bored out of his mind for that half of the summer, and it's like, okay, I get that he's bored. I don't need to be bored for half the movie, though.
Yeah.
Some people really like it, though, and I don't really understand why they want to. They want to have that feeling like you can still build. You can really drive that boredness I don't know, whatever, boredom, that's the word.
Mm.
Drive the boredom home quickly and just make it immense and expedite it, and then get into like the good parts of because I didn't think I enjoyed the film. I thought it was well done, but I did not enjoy the first half of the film at all. I was very bored.
So, and it's almost a little, I guess it's the same thing as you're describing being scared. That type of empathy, there's a certain type of empathy that you seem to want to click with, and not, boy, that seems super psychological, and I don't even mean that as an analysis of you.
Yeah, it's like, you want to, it's like, when I'm being manipulated, like when I go into an experience and I know that's what, like I go to a movie because I want to be manipulated, but I want it to be done with a soft touch. If you just push someone off a cliff, you're not convincing them that it's a good idea.
Yeah,
they're just going to fall and not enjoy themselves and realize, oh, this is a bad idea. But at least if you give them a pep talk and talk them into the situation and gently caress them off the cliff, then even though the ending is going to be something they probably don't want, you're at least the experience isn't going to suck.
Well, and that's, I think that brings me back to well done immersive, right? Well done immersive gives you the audience member the option to do that and to experience the piece in the way that's best, that works best for you. In the same way that when you cast the right actor, they're going to interpret the pieces as best for them, unless you're going to impose and force a performance out of them, right? That they don't. That they don't have. And it's the same thing in working with your audience member. You are going to come in and engage in something completely different from the person next to you. And it's not, there's a way to be able to welcome that and provide for it with that sort of depth and breadth of experience. And that's one of the awesome things about immersive.
And I mean, I think it's something that should really be applied to all stuff. I mean, I think the film and books and games and even traditional video games, anything that you're just kind of passively experiencing, the ones that work are because they immerse you in them in their own way. And immersiveness is not, it's a new medium in a sense, but it's really a lot of mediums and that are focusing on what the most important thing is in any of them, and it's just drawing people in. I wish that was more understood or more prioritized, I guess, in the creation process, because
I think it will be, though. I think that's what the changes we've seen were.
I hope so.
It's a buzzword now where a lot of people like using that word, especially like on the commercial side of it, where they're just like, oh, we're going to make these activations that promote something at Comic-Con or at movie theaters or whatever it is. So you see a lot of activations get, this weird sense of like, this, oh, people will be part of something. And it's true, like immersive stuff definitely does sell products well when you can put people in these really cool environments. A good example of a show, a Westworld or a Blade Runner, because you're getting to be in this movie experience. And that's kind of cool because fans of whatever experience are excited to be part of something. And be in this world of whether it's Westeros or Westworld or any space that you're interested in exploring. With other entertainment kind of using this word as a buzzword and not getting it. I think they'll start to. I think you're going to see people thinking in this space. It's the same thing with like VR and AR, which was when I first did the Oculus demos, I was not impressed. I mean, the graphics were... I'm
still not. We'll talk about that later.
You could see the graphics and everything and get the sense like, okay, I'll see what this is becoming. It's clearly, obviously, this is like an alpha kit. But the games I would play for it were just the equivalent of the really shitty 3D that's post-converted. That you're like, this is clearly them cutting out cardboard, cutouts and making them fly around the screen. And post-converted 3D, I hate it because it was clear the film was not...
It looks like a Nintendo DS.
Yeah. And it was...
I don't know why the Vive is not like that, but that's what I've been wondering lately.
Why the Vive is...
Why I never had that experience with the Vive, why the Vive feels like you're in it, why Oculus doesn't.
What's changed... Yeah, so it's also, I think, the games and a lot of the stuff, the platform stuff is... One of the challenges is people weren't thinking at that level. They were taking stuff that had been built in a 2D world and post-converting it. When directors think in 3D, and Tron Legacy, actually, I was really impressed with that 3D because it was really subtle. It was built into the cinematography and the placement, and to be very pretentious with film, mise-en-scène, it was built into the way they designed the production. And so there's the element of a lot of transparency that allowed for deep field of focus and depth of field that I really loved. And so for that, it felt like that actually built the world in that way. whereas most 3D is built just like things flying at you. So after a while, I've seen some directors really play, like Ridley Scott knows 3D well. And I think Prometheus was a beautiful 3D experience because like, I actually knew how the fuck 3D worked. He sat there and would shoot and direct in 3D in a tent and watch all the stuff in Video Village on 3D. And also...
This is how it should be done.
Yes.
If you're gonna do it.
And also he would watch and they made the film really light because 3D darkens it when you have the glasses on. So he made sure to make the film lighter so they would digitally darken it to where it wouldn't be too dark when viewed through the glasses. So those little touches made Prometheus, despite all its flaws narratively, a beautiful film that had these beautiful moments that when you have like the planet being approached by this tiny ship and you see the way the ship is thought, it is so well thought out. So the same thing for games in VR is the first couple games I played, first couple years, they were all, again, post-converted 3D things, which are shitty. But then there was a game I played called, I believe, Edge of Nowhere, which is like an H.P. Lovecraft-inspired like third-person view.
I've heard of that, but I don't remember.
It's great. It was deliberately designed to have... It's basically almost like a 180 view where you have the headset on, you are over the shoulder of your character that you control, and you're basically plane crashed in the Arctic and you're trying to survive as these kind of monsters begin appearing and coming after you. Very H.P. Lovecraft inspired, like At the Mountains of Madness, which I'm a big Lovecraft fan, despite him being a horrible human being.
I don't know about that, but we'll have to...
don't ever read his personal views on things.
Oh, no.
So... basically you're walking around and surviving. What I love, they did some really subtle design work that you basically have this giant view of this tundra and it's meant to make you feel powerless. So when you're outside, you feel like a very small person. They clearly made the costuming of your like, you know, your parka and your hood, like you stand out in the white, which I like because you have a lot of white, a lot of blowing. And the cool thing is there's blurring effects with the snow on the sides. So when you're looking in you have the full view of your view, but in the corners you feel like there's snow. It doesn't draw your focus away. It just adds to this beautiful little scenery. But then it helps you focus on where you can move because you have this giant tundra and you can't go everywhere. So it highlights the areas you can move by making them slightly brighter. And it uses the full screen by you're only looking at one spot, but as you move, the platforms go back and kind of curve around, and then you eventually get closer. So the camera has these really beautiful ways in which you navigate through. And then at one point you start going down a tunnel. And so you're rappelling down and it starts up a high-up view over your shoulder and you start going lower, but the camera almost lingers a little bit back than it used to. And as it goes down, there's a torch you're holding. And you see as the torch goes down and the shadows begin to fill up again, you see these things crawling along the edge of where you can see. And it really adds some beautiful suspense to it. And it wouldn't be possible in 2D to pull off some of the same effects. And I thought it was so impressive. And the last part of the game that I really liked was there are some really great jump scares that were, again, tied into the story, where you feel this madness following you. And again, it's like, is it the game's protagonist or is it you, the player? And at different points, you might turn a corner and you see like a living room set up in this cave, and you turn back and you look back and it's gone. And so it knows when you've looked and then it knows when you look back. And I loved the way it played with that. And it adds these little unsettling things that are kind of following you. And then at one point, these tentacles start crawling towards you and one wraps around your face. And there's these little, and I'm like, that's clearly a designer that thought about how to design the VR world, that knew how to use the technology and actually think about the space.
Well, that's the thing with any of this stuff, though. It's like you have a point, you have some tools, figure out how to make the point with the tools. That's all you have to do. Easier said than done, obviously, but like that's the thing I think a lot of people just forget about is that I have a reason I'm making this. I have a destination I want to that I'm headed towards. This is what I've got. How can I, in every single instance I'm trying to put something together, how can that be used to accomplish the goal?
100% yes is with both of what you're saying, because the question is not just can I use the technology, but how can it serve the story? And why am I using this technology to begin with? We can just make something immersive, but why make it immersive? And what purpose does that serve? And if it's going to be to augment the story, then how are we augmenting the story and making it deeper rather than just putting ornaments on top of it and tacking something on? Because you feel that. You feel when it's just like you say 2D that's just made to be 3D. Okay, yeah, great. This was 2D. It'll be better if it's 3D.
That's it. Is designing something, and that's the thing about translation that works. Is like one of my favorite things in exploring different mediums is what can you do in that medium that's really hard to do elsewhere, because that should be one of the highlights of what you're doing. There's a novel that I read that I really like where you don't know who certain characters are. You know that, for example, a character, it's all told third person. You know, for example, that there is a woman dating a man, but you don't know if she's dating the killer or she's dating an innocent person. And I love that it's the idea of in a film that you couldn't pull that off because you know what each person has done. And you're like, I know this asshole's here somewhere. I know he's one of these characters, but I don't know which one. In a visual medium, you could tell. Same thing with an audio or radio drama because you're going to hear the voices. So the challenge is how do you convey that and translate that in the same effective way in different medium? That's really hard to do. So the idea of there are things
to convey. Why would it be hard to convey whether or not someone is innocent or a killer in a movie? Because
you've already followed these characters throughout the story, and it cuts to later, you know this killer is somehow in one of these scenes, but you don't know if he's the boyfriend. Like it's followed from the perspective of the killer. You've seen this killer do things in the narrative.
Okay, but you have to see them do things.
Well, yeah, and exactly that you can in a book you have a pronoun to be able to say he, and that he can be anything that the that we the reader imagine. In film, the way that you're getting that consistency is someone's voice, someone's look. There's no he. That he is clear. So doing it in a book is one way versus doing it in the Usual Suspects, which is another. And the way that they did it was to use narrative. In that case,
with the Cuckoo's Nest.
Yeah, but I was just confused because it seemed like Usual Suspects is a hiding in plain sight example. It seems like that is very possible to.
Well, no, but what the book does is you follow in the first chapter the killer. You don't know what this guy's name is, what he looks like. You know nothing about him physically or his appearance, his voice. You just know he's an asshole, and you see him do awful things to people. And then the perspective changes to later down the line. You have a woman dating a man, and based on things the book lays, you know the killer is somehow still present, and you don't know if there's a boyfriend she's dating. And this can either be an innocent, nice guy, or it can be the killer. You know are the writers deliberately messing with you because you know at some point the killer's going to pop up. And he drops hints that maybe the person dating her is this guy you followed earlier on. Obviously, if you're doing a film that pulls off the same effectiveness of trying to reveal whether or not she's dating the killer, you would know from the instant you see him.
Yeah, so you have to play with things off screen.
Exactly, and the effect, it's not as effective because there's a lot of scenes you couldn't be able to pull off the same way. So you'd have to basically change the story to make it work in the constraints of a physical or visual narrative.
And then use something else in its place or...
Exactly. And at that point, you're changing it enough that it's not the same beast.
Yeah.
So that's what I try to pull off in different mediums, is like, what are things you can do that you can't pull off as well in other things? In another novel, in Cuckoo's Nest, it's narrated by the chief, who's mute and deaf. And Ken Kesey argued in the film version, you wanted the point of view of the film to be from him, and it's hard to pull that off.
Yeah, too hard.
Additionally, you might even have a story where, let's say, your story is told from the point of view of a serial killer, and you may not know the character's name, gender, identity, anything about this person if it's told first person point of view. It's really hard to, again, pull that off when you translate it to another medium.
Yeah. Or then, you're talking about things that way makes me think of The Sound and the Fury, which was a huge book for me in making immersive things.
Yeah.
The really unreliable narrator where it's you have to track with that person's brain the way that it is on paper in order to understand what they're seeing. Which Faulkner was pushing the medium to even be able to do that to begin with.
Yeah.
But yet it's actually some of his stuff translates brilliantly onto film. Same thing with Ulysses, James Joyce's Ulysses. It was a very difficult book to read, but an easy film to watch as far as it goes. The editing, it's a very cinematically written book. So it's weird the way that can transfer over from one way to another.
Yeah,
anyway.
It's interesting to hear about this specifically, especially with the murderer situation. Because in the game I'm working on, I have that, and I made the decision like a month or two ago to unmask the killer in the first episode, and before you know that's who that character is, like you're told.
Wow.
Up until the point you get to you're actually introduced everything that you need to know to identify this person, because the point was never about who it was, and I didn't want people thinking about who it was. It's the context and of who that person is. I'm saying this in like a very vague way because I don't want to put it out there.
Yeah, I'm starting to track with you. Keep going.
But it's like it's the sort of thing of the difference of a tomato being in a refrigerator versus being in the garbage. In the sense that it's a very different tomato in a refrigerator than it is if you put it in the trash.
Yeah.
So who is this person, and who that person is doesn't matter. It matters what context that person is in.
The show Damages did that really well. I thought for a TV show there's some really clever things.
For the first season, we're talking about the first season.
Yeah, I know. It kind of had diminishing returns over the years, but the first season of Damages did some really very clever stuff with narrative I hadn't seen done in a TV series before. That would be really hard to translate over back to a novel or anything else. By taking advantage of the fact that you see people and they may not be named, and making assumptions about certain things, but they took advantage of that medium really, really well.
Yeah.
So really fine examples that kind of push the boundaries of what a medium can do. I think is super interesting.
Yeah, and treating it like a different medium and giving it the respect and innovation and exploration that requires, as opposed to an element of the core medium. They're all elements of the story and the root basis of communication, but it's a different medium, and it provides different things and different limitations, things that it can do to contribute to what you're creating, and things that it means you can't create anymore.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Well said.
Yeah. Well, I think we should probably move on to a little bit of the news, so we have time for it today. I want to jump back into this before we're done too, though, to talk about the Oculus Go, because that came out this week. And so did Lenovo's headset, which I don't remember the name of, but they're both standalone VRs. I have been waiting on the Oculus for a while, and I got it, and I don't like it very much, but I want to talk about it. It's just been getting really good reviews, and I'm not sure why.
Why do you like it?
Oh, well, we'll go there after.
Okay.
I want to make sure we get to Android P. And you know all about that, so I don't want to ruin it.
Google I/O comes out. It's their conference where they kind of talk about their new stuff. Assistant was center. They had a lot of crazy tech demos showing Assistant making a phone call on your behalf to a hair salon or to make reservations at a restaurant, and then failing to do so because they had too few people to make a reservation. But they demoed real calls that they've tested out. People are joking it's going to be the tormenting the service industry by having these robots calling and trying to make appointments and then getting confused. But the demos were impressive. I think they're pushing a lot of Assistant stuff. They're really trying to play catch up to Alexa right now, and Amazon right now with their kind of integrated thing, and they're
integrated. You mean like with where it can be put in all those sorts of devices?
Services and everything. And Amazon right now has is saying like 15,000 different connected things you can do. And
they need to get their voice synthesis out there though, because Amazon with Polly has a great system. It's really, they bought Ivona, but it's better than pretty much anything else out there that is a commercially viable option, which I'm saying to exclude Lyrebird specifically from that, but also some others. It's just the best, and it's not the best because Google's is the best. And if you hear these demos, it's clear why. But if you just go look at WaveNet, you can really hear why.
Yeah, no, the demos are impressive, and I think they have a nice piece of tech that they're expanding. So a lot of third-party headsets are coming out for headsets, visual displays. So a lot of the Android stuff for Assistant was limited to a screen with a phone. But now they have assistants that will have visual screens. All the other assistants were not screened.
Yeah, I would like to have
but
that.
They haven't announced a first-party one yet. They're doing partnerships where, LG and Samsung and these different companies.
Have they released them yet? I remember hearing about it, but
they're on the way now. They announced them before. They announced a lot more now. They also announced Android P stuff. It's just becoming more like the iPhone in terms of there's going to be gestures. They're going to get rid of the docks and the software buttons. So they're really pushing Android P now. I'm annoyed because they have yet to really allow for some users like me to join the beta program. For whatever reason, I can't.
Yeah,
I'm locked out. Other people think they're going through the same thing, but
it's got to be a bug.
It's a bug, or they're deliberately picking certain carriers that they don't want on the beta program yet.
Yeah, and they're gonna. I feel like it's gonna be one of those things like it tends to be with Google usually, where they realize that that was a bad decision. We forgot that people get angry about things online.
Yeah, they're also pushing more messaging platforms, which is annoying.
They have another one?
No, but what they're trying to do is they just abandoned support for Allo right now, which is their big like web WhatsApp thing. They actually said that development is halting right now, and they're all focusing on RCS, which is the kind of more advanced text messaging platform they're trying to push through their platform called Jibe.
Great, but just like pick one platform and then break it into pieces or something. But like call it one thing. 'Cause I don't even know what the fuck is.
Their goal is to push SMS more heavily and have more advanced SMS features.
Why that though?
I don't know. That you'll have to ask them. I guess
SMS has limitation. I mean, like I feel like what Apple did with iMessage made the most sense.
Well, they're going to be doing a web version for, but it's not going to be an iMessage. People want an Android iMessage. It's not that. It's going to be basically where you can message people on like a chat window, kind of like WhatsApp, or not WhatsApp. Sorry, Pushbullet. That is your SMS, but it's not going through Google servers.
I mean, as long as it's like, as long as I don't have to type on my phone to send a text message, I'm cool. And that it syncs and everything works. But also it's like SMS though, it's great, it's universal. I would rather have a universal non-proprietary system. That's what I don't like about iMessage, because I can't use it other places.
It's similar to the Affordable Care Act in the way that they had to work with health insurers to get that passed. This is the same way, where any universal messaging platform is going to be controlled by a third party, and Google wanted it to be theirs. It's not. Clearly, Allo is not being what they wanted. You have enough competitors that are already purchased by other bigger companies. So I think they realized their big set was working with the carriers. So the problem is getting your carriers have to support your next level support.
Yeah.
So Jibe is their like next level platform for SMS that allows for read receipts and sending more advanced stuff and doing group chats. So they're trying to push that, and thankfully carriers have piled on and agreed to do it. So their big goal is to push that, and they're trying to dial down into their standard is going to be what SMS is now used for. At least that's what their plan is.
And I mean, I'm fine with SMS. It's just they need to up the character limit if they're going to do that. Otherwise, you have all these messages that...
Yes, so it would up character limit. It would allow for group messaging that you can also remove yourself from. So there's a lot of options they're doing with it. So it's trying to make SMS more grown up.
Yeah, and that's fine. Yeah. If they want to do that, great. Just make that character limit like 5,000 or something. Just so, I mean, if someone goes beyond that, then they can start a new message at that point. That's fine.
P didn't do anything crazy for me, just in terms of like what their new stuff is.
It seems like everything's components now.
Yeah, it's
that's fine.
It's trying to make it more gesture based. I think planning for phones that have notches. They did announce a thing last year called Treble, which allows for more OEMs to update to the more current version. Because the thing that would hold you people back from upgrading was the chipsets, and so this allows for basically the ability to upgrade parts of the OS without having to touch the chipset, meaning that you're kind of future-proofed. You can keep upgrading the software without having to worry about this chipset going out. So before it was all kind of tied together. Now it's not. Yeah. So that's the big push, is because Android still has a really bad adoption rate for new stuff. Yeah. Like it usually takes a few months for even to get...
does Apple love to promote that.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of fragmentation. And the idea that at some point, you want people to have your newest OS immediately, you're always going to have to go through the carriers, because I have a Pixel. I should be getting the current updates that happen, but I've got to go through T-Mobile, because every carrier has the ability to has to inspect upgrades before they come through. I could technically sideload it, or I could remove my SIM card and put a SIM card for Verizon or something. It could load in and I'd have it. But to get everything over the air, you have to have the carrier. So carriers are a necessary evil for them to go through.
Yeah.
So
but I think I look forward to Google completing this journey for themselves and for, I guess, their customers, because I feel like Chrome OS is the blueprint that they want for everything.
Yeah.
And
you can see, not Chrome OS. Their new feature is called Fuchsia, and that's probably going to be what's going to be on things down the line. Yeah. But that's years before they get that.
But I mean, Chrome OS was they were like, this is the future that we're envisioning. I'm thinking like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Because that's, you update the browser, the operating system is the shell that it lives in. It gets updates, all this stuff happens, but you're not looking to that for features. You're looking to the software platform.
Exactly.
And so that's, if Android becomes that, where there's no where there's no operating system version, I should say, that it doesn't get updated. It's like, here's a new feature for you. Here's a new feature for you. Kind of like a website rolls it out.
That was their goal for a lot.
Apple can't shit on them anymore.
That was their goal for a lot of their software was removing it from the system and making it a separate piece where you can update that without having to update the actual thing.
And you can see how much trouble it's been for them, just given how long it's taken, how each little piece has come in a new version or whatever. But I look forward to the day where Apple is like, oh, wait, we can't say that anymore. And I'm curious how they're going to deal with that, because I feel like they're going to realize, oh, yeah, we did it. I mean, they can't be that dumb. They have to see that this is happening.
So that's I/O. Assistant is not going anywhere. It's getting better. They also have new voices. John Legend recorded one too.
Oh.
Those are available now.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's easy for them to create voices. They only need 8 minutes now.
Yeah, they're doing a lot more API stuff that allows people to tie into their learning neural networks. They also rebranded their learning thing to just calling it research, to just calling AI. So it's clear they're doubling down on the AI and assistant stuff.
Yeah, they should. They're so far ahead of everyone.
Yeah, so that's Google.
I would say that I keep seeing Amazon get put on par with Google and Microsoft getting put on par with Google, and I would say that Microsoft's probably a little ahead of Amazon in some areas and vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
But Google's, granted, there are some things that they don't do that the other platforms do, but I would say that the vast majority, if not all of it, is just not public, if that's the case.
Yeah.
And they are way ahead. I mean, like all the papers I see coming out, those are generally coming from people attached to Google in one way or another, regardless of how direct it may be. They've got that. They're ahead of Microsoft on holographic. We just haven't seen it yet. Most people haven't seen it yet, but I mean, that's where those Magic Leap dollars have been going. It's just I think Google's actually, everyone always thinks of Apple as the secretive company. Google's actually just doing it. No one's paying attention, and they're making good use of that, I think.
Yeah.
But it'll be interesting to see how it goes. I mean, they're far more interesting to watch than anybody these days, and I hope it's good, because just watching how everything's being handled on YouTube, it's not really reassuring that they care about the people who use their platform.
Yeah.
But Google's never been good with human beings, so
yeah, Google.
Although they had that they have that training thing that they integrated into the assistant that teaches kids how to be polite or whatever.
Oh yes, yeah, they please. And Amazon did the same thing. So they're trying to all make kids be polite, because we do live in a world where kids are going to be interacting with software and not saying please. So I actually usually say please to mine.
I get scolded by Amazon if I call it stupid. I don't think Google does that, and I don't. And sometimes I'll apologize after I say it immediately, but once it's heard it doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah.
But yeah, she's just she's like, that's not very nice. I'm like, I know, I wasn't. You don't understand tone or context or me making a joke or what. We've got a ways to go still, but at the same time, it's also like, oh wow, this is happening really, really fast, and all these things are going to be here, and I would really love it if I was seeing more examples from smaller companies or just people using this sort of technology to do really good, and I don't want to use the word altruistic necessarily because it's not my favorite word in the world, but doing things that are better, that are good for people.
Grounded in people. I think that's the main thing with any of this technology, VR or otherwise. The thing that I remember is my great aunt who passed away at 102 in her late 90s. Wow. Yeah. So it was in her late 90s that cell phones were coming out and were being used in Facebook and so we were sitting around at a table and we asked her what her thought was about all of that, because this is a woman who taught in a one-room schoolhouse.
She's seen a lot of changes.
Yeah, exactly. And she said that what it comes down to is people need people, and that's never going to change. It really drove home for me. That's because I'm not at the my own perspective is I'm by no means at the cutting edge of tech stuff. I learned the tech to express the emotional things, but I think that's what's important that all of us do is to keep rooted in that. Same thing, be it YouTube, paying attention to the people that use the platform. Part of that, even those basic interactions, is kind of why we're why we're in the weeds that we're in today.
That's the hard thing with the technology too, though. It's I feel like I try very hard to not just understand how it works, but actually be able to use complex stuff like machine learning to accomplish the goals that I have, because I don't want to be the guy who can sort of talk about it. I want to be able to, like if someday I have a bunch of programmers I'm working with, to be able to look at the code and talk to them on their level, even if I don't necessarily know all the complexities. But it's like, if you get that far into it, if you get so deep into any of these technologies that you really are an expert at them, I feel like you can't be that connected with other stuff. You can't have that creative element, not because, you're anything bad about you. I can't think of the right word for it, but because you're stuck in a very complicated thing for people, for a human being.
Yeah. What's the compromise of genius?
Yeah.
You become that so specified and focused in that one area, it's difficult to step back.
Yeah, but I also think I think it's a compromise of that kind of genius. I think, and because I think I can't think of an example of a polymath that has been labeled a genius necessarily, but that has to have happened at some point. I don't really have a list of people who've ever been labeled a genius. It's like you think of Einstein, and we'll probably think of Richard Feynman too at some point, if not already for some. But it's not. I guess you just don't hear that a lot. I mean, like, oh God, I don't want to say this, but like, I've been called a genius a lot in my life, and I don't accept that. It's people have said that to me, but they're usually people that I'm talking about some sort of technology that they don't understand, and so there's a big gap there. And so I think that's where it comes from. And I think a lot of people are. I mean, you both probably have been called a genius by somebody. Sometimes, like some people will say it as like an exaggeration to be complimentary. Some people will like really believe that they're saying it. Yeah. But if you've done anything smart in your life, you've probably heard the word before. It's just really, how do you determine that? Because it can.
Well, it's usually applied so much to specifics. I guess that's.
It's knowledge and contribution, though.
Yeah, exactly, and contributing through that knowledge. I guess that's the thing is if you can only see the world through the lens of what that specific area is, it becomes its own complexity in being able to relate to people.
Yeah, then you're just executing.
Yeah. Which is,
you have to be relational. Even if it's other stuff.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, how do you bring it to a person?
Yeah. Which is why it's important that you have the goal that you have as you keep on delving in.
Yeah, I think Google would benefit so much by having a group of 150 or less people, because I know that's how they have to operate, and I get it. But they should have that group or a couple of groups to cover the globe. And that are basically the translators between the engineers and the end users, someone who's capable of understanding both sides of it and really trying to bridge that gap, so they can say, oh, okay, well, have you thought about doing it like this? Because this is, when I look at how people are operating, maybe they need psychologists in there. Every time I think of like, oh yeah, we need more psychology in this, I think of all the psychologists I've met, and I'm like, I don't think that they would be very good at this.
Yeah.
It's there got to be. I mean, there are so many people in the world. Like, I think the internet. We never really are confronted with how many people are in the world until we kind of go online. And if you just look at I would challenge people listening to going online and going to like look for genes. Go look for genes on 10 different websites, and then just take a look at how many beautiful people are fitting into these genes, and you're never probably going to look that good as they do. And that's a tiny fraction of the human population. And it's a lot of people. You go throughout your day, you see a lot of people that are not that good looking. Granted, a lot of them are photoshopped or to the point where they probably look better than they actually do.
Unrealistic standard, yeah.
But there are a lot of people who are realistically that good looking. It's just, you don't see them every day because there's so many people, and it's mind-boggling to me, like how much happens, how much goes on, how I drive by a strip mall in LA, which, and by strip mall, I mean like one of those corner ones that have like 8 things in them. And they're everywhere, and how many people's lives, how many businesses, how many experiences exist in this city in places I could probably walk to fairly easily, and I will never ever know any of them or realize what's going on. But there's a ton.
Yeah.
And you just don't know until you're there. It's the world is gigantic, and we're, I think, really experiencing that on a scale we haven't before. I mean, like, so the growth is just so fast that it's hard to I guess, especially with a lot of the other things going on in the world, really grasp what reality is anymore.
Well, and then and then grasp what the concrete effect of what this growth is having on reality. And which is that innovation comes up so much that we're not even paying attention to what the result of it is. Like you say, the psychology and the way that people interact with it. It's not just creating the piece, it's understanding that, again, I come back to immersive. It's not just creating the piece, it's understanding that the other part of the piece is truly how people interact with it. You can make your piece that is fantastic for your friends. You can make the piece of technology, whatever you're working on, that makes perfect sense to yourself and to the people in a close-knit circle. But to really make it is to expand the level of communication and be able to see how it affects other people, the stranger that walks through the door or picks up the piece.
Yeah, and to jump into the Oculus for just a sec, since we got to wrap up soon, that's not a bad segue, because I think that was why I disconnected with it the most. For some reason, the Vive looks better. I can't quite put my finger on it. There's that I don't remember what the word is, but when the rainbow colors come out of the lenses, or what it starts to chromatic aberration. Does that apply here? Is that right? I don't know. But when you see the RGB coming out of the white, that happens a lot on the Oculus Go. It kind of brings you out of the experience, but also there's just something that feels very flat about it. It doesn't feel 3D. It feels like the cutout. So there are a lot of things like that. Spatial sound's awesome, blah, blah, blah. The Vive doesn't do that, but it was, but it made me forget, when I was playing with it for the first time yesterday, it made me forget that the experience matters so much there, because it was so easy to focus on the technical flaws that I was seeing, that it just wasn't. I mean, I have cheaper standalone headsets that I got years ago, or 2 years ago, that I can't really do a whole lot with, but I remember looking significantly better and thinking like, oh yeah, when I get this one, this is going to be a step up and it's going to be awesome. And it's not. It's the experience is better since it kind of walks you through the whole thing. One thing not to do, they make you watch a safety video. You have to watch it. You have to go through this whole process. You have to set the thing up with your phone. I got the whole thing set up, turned it on, put it on my head, and it's like, get your phone out. You got to download an app.
That's frustrating.
And then I had to watch all this stuff while I was updating. It's great for, and I keep wanting to say dumb people, but I've been scolded for, when I say dumb people, I'm a dumb person too. Everybody's dumb at something. You're not smart yet. That's what that's how I define dumb. Yeah. You're not smart at this thing yet. But yeah, so people who are not smart at VR yet, or not into that experience yet, they're the dumb users, and that's totally cool, not a judgment. But they're the ones that are having a difficult that need that walkthrough. I would like the opportunity to skip it. I would like a button that says, yes, I get VR and the safety concerns. I've been doing this for a while. Please don't make me sit here and, realistically go downstairs, get a snack, and then come back up and hope the video's done.
Yeah, some type of verification system or something like that would be nice.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's like, I guess probably for legal reasons, maybe they have to do that. Maybe that's neither here nor there, though. It's
incorporating updates.
Yeah. It was this morning, which was problematic because I spent too long in the headset. And I should have, and I don't know if I have the stuff on my face still. You can't really see it anymore. I don't think so. It was there at like 11:45, so I was probably there from before we started the show. But it was I played this one. I think, oh God, what was it called? It was a VR in VR AI game, and it starts with an A. And I can't remember what it was, but it was like you're a human working for AI, because you're relevant now. And then you're kind of trying to you go on jobs and you have to like stick toast in a big piece of butter. You have to whisper to a
Yeah.
pinwheel.
Yeah,
It was-
yeah.
Have you tried this?
Wow.
I've not seen the demo of it. I've seen videos of it.
You should. You would really, I think,
That sounds fun.
like it. But you're also, there's this human resistance that's saying like this is all messed up and we shouldn't be here, and you don't really know why you're there or what exactly is going on. You kind of have some context, but you're getting information from all sides, and it felt a bit like an escape room in VR.
Those are fun, yeah.
Yeah, and so it was, and that's why obviously I thought of you, Tommy. But the whole thing was, I got into that experience, and it let me explore and interact with the environment and everything I had been doing before. It was very passive, so it was very easy to focus on this doesn't look good, or I don't like this thing. And that was the same thing with the HoloLens. Is fortunately I started with a good experience on the HoloLens, but everybody I had heard reviewing it prior to my personal experience with it was this doesn't. The field of view is too small. It doesn't go everywhere. It's there are limitation XYZ, and then when I got into this experience this morning, it was I forgot about all that stuff because I was just like, oh, I want to see what's over here. I want to see what's over there. I understood how to interact. I forgot that I only have one arm. I don't know where I am. I'm looking for things, exploring places back and forth, trying to figure something out. Was less boring than it is in, say, like a traditional video game where you feel like your quests are just back and forth errands that could have been accomplished a lot more easily if they had just said, get these 3 things instead of get this one. Oh, I need this. Oh, I need this. Hi, Ni no Kuni 2. I'm talking about you right now. I'm so glad to be done with that game. It was great, but I hated it at the same time. It was just so tedious. But I felt like when I was going through this game, which I really wish I could remember the name of. I'm going to try to look it up on my phone before we wrap up. But it was going through the whole experience and being like, oh, okay, well, I got caught and I had to start over again. And so, and then I went into a room and then I couldn't figure out how to get something that I had gotten before. And I just didn't end up seeing it. But then I went back and started exploring all these other areas and trying new things. And it was still fun because it was a new experience. I hadn't when you make a new attempt in there, suddenly you're still discovering something different. Whereas when you're doing quests in a game, it's just kind of like you're getting interactions that have nothing to do with what you're thinking or moving around or how you're moving around or whatever. And so that experience took me out of the Oculus problems, made me forget that it is the most uncomfortable VR headset I've ever worn. Which is weird because you'd think I've worn an actual Oculus and it's more comfortable. I don't know why this one is what they did. It's like something about it's like they tried too hard to make the padding comfortable that it just doesn't fit right, and it just feels like there's this suction cup on your face.
That sounds comfortable.
Although I've heard the Google Daydream described as as like wearing sweatpants on your face.
Oh,
so that
fun.
Maybe is not your. Although people are positive about all these things, and it's like I love that the Oculus is $200, or the Oculus Go is $200. It's very affordable. It's a good system because it has, as far as I understand it, the content. I'm unfortunately only got like one piece of that content I would call better content, which I'm going to find the name of because it is that one benefit to the phone. It having to be set up with the phone is I should be able to look at what I've actually put on here in the app, but yeah, it's the right experience changes everything. It doesn't matter how crappy it is if you're using it well.
That's a good. I like that statement
because the technology is always going to be outdated at some point.
As soon as it's just like the thing that as soon as you drive your car off the lot, it loses value. As soon as you begin committing to a chip, your product when it gets made. A manufacturer is going to be behind the times because they have that chip that's not going to be unless it allow for upgraded chips. It's always going to be behind.
It's okay. So it's called virtual reality, but it had a different name in the game. That's why that's what I thought it was called. But I was like, in the game, it has like the name of the company, and so I thought that was the name of the game. But apparently it's not. It's called virtual reality. It's really good. It's like $10, and I almost didn't buy it, but I'm really glad that I did. Because it's quite the experience to have. But I wish I knew what that company was called. I guess that doesn't really matter that much. Anyway, it's fun. It's quirky. It's super weird. It's the sort of thing that like I rarely get to see in any medium, I guess. And I really like, and so I'm always charmed by those things. But yeah, okay, we gotta wrap it up. I think the only thing we didn't get to really was Microsoft Build, but they released some new laptops. That the new Surface Book has, I don't know what it has, but there's an upgraded version of it. And they're announcing some new things in AI too. Maybe we'll jump on that later, but that hasn't really been making waves in the news. So, I mean, Tommy, you didn't hear anything stand out about that either, did you?
Not especially. Yeah,
so hopefully more next week from Microsoft, and it won't be a lull. I'm really waiting on that HoloLens news though, because I was sure when I started working with them, like 2016 was it? I think it was 2016. I was sure that like, oh yeah, they're releasing the developer preview to everybody. It's still gonna be $3,000, but hey, the holiday season's coming around, and they're gonna need to make a HoloLens 2 at some point. Why not lower the price? Try to get it into, release it properly. It's one of the strongest betas I've ever seen. It was like back when it wasn't released to the public. I'm like, not a lot of software, but it was solid. It worked perfectly. I never encountered bugs really. So
that's rare.
Yeah. But so it's just like years keep going by, and I know they're working on more. I know what they were working on then. They've got to have made progress. You can see it in other aspects. They've obviously been trying to get more people involved in it for cheaper prices, but with the crappy headsets, but people don't like them.
No.
And so I really want to see that. I really want to see the HoloLens go down in price, because I want to have one again that I actually get to keep, and I miss it. That's like the one. I mean, there needs to be like an overarching term for all these things, but virtual reality, mixed reality, augmented reality.
Yeah.
All of those rolled into one. That's the best that I've experienced so far. I'm still waiting on the Magic Leap one. I need to.
That's the game changer.
That. Yeah, that and the Void, which the Void is in a mall in around Glendale.
Also Anaheim.
In Anaheim too, I guess. So, and they're doing some Star Wars thing. I haven't tried that one. I did the Ghostbusters one in Utah when I went to interview them, but it is very good.
Have you done the Void Star Wars yet? I'd be curious what you guys think when you do it.
Do you think it's I'm
excited for the future, but there's a lot of, it's for what they're doing, it's impressive, but it's not where it needs to be yet.
Yeah, I mean, I felt kind of that way about Ghostbusters a little bit too. It was so impressive in how it worked to me that I really appreciated it. But if I was judging it like there are a lot of these things out there, because this is literally the only company that does it at this level, where you can smell it and touch it and whatever, and they trick you by like when you turn a little bit, they can make it look like you turn a lot. And when you keep picking up the same object, but it's different objects.
I got to meet the head of the Void at IC at the Design Summit, and he's.
I hear they like to go. And at design. Oh, that's a different place. I've heard they like to go to the openings of these things. And,
they like to watch,
talk to people.
Yeah, without revealing who they are. Yeah, but they work with a lot of magic principles of misdirection.
Yeah, one of them is a magician, I think.
Yep.
My interview was a while ago, and it was a harrowing experience, not because of them, but because of the airlines.
Yeah.
And I won't get into it. That was on Awkward, that story, but yeah, I missed some flights. Got screwed over by a car rent. I mean, like everything that could go wrong went wrong. But it was one of those, I love a crisis. Like so many bad things have happened to me at this point that like I've started to enjoy it. And not on a level like getting hacked was, but on a level like where I really genuinely feel excited when something's wrong for myself or someone else. And I have to take like 3 seconds and say, don't smile. This is not good.
Yes.
But it's like, yes, this is a challenge, and I know this is something that I'm prepared for, and so it's like, all right, good. I get to shine today.
There's a word in Italian for that.
There is?
It's fiero.
Oh.
Fiero. Yeah. I actually. The joy at meeting a challenge. It's often mistranslated. At least so I read as pride.
Oh, okay. I was wondering, it's like, why in Wicked is that character Fiero named that, if that's what it means, because he's like the antithesis of meeting a challenge. I think that's the only time I've heard that name used as a name.
It's a word. Maybe it's
it's much better than Schadenfreude. That's a much more positive, complex term and easier to remember and say.
Yeah, I'll have to remember that. I will have to remember the book and and
Oh,
what the book is for sure.
I shouldn't
but-
speak to the book because I don't. A friend of mine read it before the musical was out, but the musical is what I'm thinking back to. And
Oh, I mean the book that I remember the quote from.
the quote from.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Just
I was
making
talking
sure
about
that I'm-
Wicked.
Yeah, very different. Very different. Yeah.
Yes, those are different things.
Shall we?
Yes, we shall. Goodbye, everybody. Thanks for listening this
Thanks.
week. We'll be back next week. You shouldn't be surprised by that after all this time. I guess it's our 200th episode, so if you have any thoughts on that one, we didn't think about that.
Yeah, people have thoughts, comments,
But-
jokes, questions, riddles.
Send something in. If there's a favorite moment that you've been missing from previous shows, let me know. We'll try to integrate it in, and I guess we'll just try to think of something interesting to do
That'll be fun.
for that episode. All right. Talk to you next week.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks for listening to this episode of Supercharged. If you'd like to send in a comment or a question, you can do so on awkward.email. You just go on your web browser to awkward.email. It's actually a website. And you can call or text 509-AWKWARD instead if you'd like to just skip all of that and do it from your phone. Also, if you'd like to check out some of our other shows, we've got a lot of great shows now, and we're having more every day, or, eventually. You can do that on awkwardhuman.com/podcast. Go check it out. We've got a lot of good stuff, and we hope that you'll be listening every week. Thanks.